The hero of our story is a genius blacksmith with no equal. He forged the sword that allowed his childhood friend to slay the Demon King and become a legend. Yet our hero received nothing in return. He remained poor despite his immense talent, even sacrificing his childhood love who admired the hero. He endured it all, until the moment he discovered his friend's betrayal. Now he has decided to use his craft for one purpose: revenge. Amidst a crowd of people, a sword glowing with a verdant aura was revealed after its forging was finally completed, announced as the legendary hero's sword. A girl with bandaged hands reacts with annoyance to a naive comment, slapping her forehead as she scolds the speaker for spouting nonsense again by claiming the sword is no different from any other. She then begins to explain the sword's unique characteristics, clarifying that it is forged from the legendary orichalcum metal and that its unbreakable durability is merely the beginning of its features. The girl continues her explanation with enthusiasm, mentioning that the sword feels as light as a feather to its wielder. Yet every strike hits the target with 10 times the force. Furthermore, it is cursed to the extent that it nullifies any healing skills used on those it wounds. She adds that what she mentioned is only half of the sword's capabilities, then pauses to point out that the one who crafted this incredible weapon is her childhood friend, Bill Park, the blonde-haired young man standing in the arena while shouts of admiration and awe rise from the surrounding crowds. Bill appears shy and flustered, muttering that he only hopes his humble skills will contribute to achieving world peace, while the attendees demand he raise his voice so they can hear him. One of them looks at him with intense admiration, admitting inwardly how magnificent this young man's achievement is. The long-haired golden hero grasps the sword, expressing his astonishment at its immense power, wondering if it is truly right for him to possess a weapon of such greatness, especially since even the royal blacksmiths cannot handle orichalcum metal. Bill answers with a confident smile, explaining to the hero that no matter the quality of the weapon, it remains mere scrap unless its user can unleash its full power, while one of the attendees is so impressed by his character that he cannot even look him in the eye. The hero places his hand on Bill's shoulder, moved by his words, and promises him that he will make him the greatest blacksmith in the entire continent. Bill looks at the hero in amazement as the latter shines with an aura of light in a scene that suggests grandeur. Bill thanks the hero shyly, thinking to himself that he is just a simple blacksmith from a remote border region compared to the great hero. Bill watches the hero and his companions as they admire the beauty of the sword and talk about how it will guarantee them victory over the Demon King, accepting his role as a side character in their story, satisfied that his skills contribute to helping them. After that, Bill calls out to the girl, Sepia, and tells her with hesitation and a blushing face that he made something for her while working on the sword. With a trembling hand, he presents her with a small ring he made from orichalcum, expressing his hope that it will look beautiful on her. Bill tries to downplay the importance of the gift, claiming it holds no special meaning, despite internally admitting the opposite, then tries to tell her something else. He tells her that what matters to him now is that she makes him happy by accepting this ring. Sepia looks at him with a calm smile and suggests he give her the ring after they defeat the Demon King, since the ring is so precious to him. Bill is surprised for a moment, then smiles a sad smile, realizing what she means, and agrees to her request. He clenches his hand around the ring, fully understanding what Sepia implied with her words. He admits to himself that he had known for a long time that Sepia loved the hero, but he felt that if he didn't try now, he would never get another chance. He imagines how she will soon leave with the hero to a faraway place he cannot reach. With features filled with sorrow, he silently wishes her happiness with the hero, while looking at the team's heroes standing together. 4 years later, a man celebrates excessively in his workshop, announcing that the hero's party has eliminated the Demon Lord and that the era of peace has finally arrived. In his drunken euphoria, he asks his assistants about the lesson learned, answering himself boastfully that their master is the youngest Meister in the Empire and contributed to saving the world, while Bill asks him to stop. But another assistant interrupts his joy, asking about the point of their master's greatness when they are unable to even pay taxes and their workshop is about to be seized. The man gets angry because the young man ruined his celebratory mood and throws a bottle at his face. He then starts screaming in anger, wondering if that was Bill's fault, blaming the Empire for supporting only large workshops, considering the country's system completely corrupt. Bill tries to calm him down, saying they surely have their reasons, and asks him to stop screaming. Bill comments that running a country is no easy feat, expressing his immense pride that he was able to help the hero in his mission. His uncle corrects him sarcastically, explaining that the title of hero changed long ago to Supreme Protector, a title meaning the guardian of the throne, who is not of royal blood. His uncle Phil feels sorry and apologizes to Bill, believing that if he hadn't insisted on him taking over the family business, Bill would now be the best blacksmith in the imperial palace. Bill reassures his uncle, confirming that this was his choice and there's no need to worry, vowing that he will earn the necessary money somehow. They decide then to extinguish the fire in the workshop as the time for the nightly curfew imposed by the Supreme Protector approaches, expressing their fear of being caught by the patrol guard. The next day, as Bill walks down the street, he feels optimistic about the mobile repair service he started, hoping to pay off the overdue taxes this month, but mass chanting interrupts his thoughts. He discovers the source of the chanting is a large crowd of protesting merchants demanding their rights be guaranteed. Bill asks a passerby in confusion about the cause of this commotion. The man tells him that the empire has restricted its trade dealings to large guilds only, causing chaos and unrest in the country, and that the authority itself seems helpless to find a solution. Bill sees the angry crowds facing a line of heavily armed soldiers, so he thanks the man for explaining the matter. Bill looks at the protesters with disdain, describing them to himself as fools, believing that what they are doing will be of no use and will not change the state's policy. He continues thinking that they do not value their lives and do not realize the ruler's power, wondering anxiously about the fate of their families if they are arrested. Despite his harsh thoughts, he feels the whole scene is pathetic, and it seems he cannot completely ignore the matter even though it does not concern him directly. He continues to watch the situation with concern as the shouts of the protesters rise around him. Suddenly his eyes widen when he spots a familiar face among the demonstrators, chanting enthusiastically with them, discovering it is his Uncle Phil. Bill stands terrified, wondering why his uncle is there. Uncle Phil is surprised to see Bill and asks him why he came to this place. Before Bill can reply, the voice of the Knight Commander booms, announcing that due to the citizens' failure to adhere to the rules of conduct and by order of the Supreme Protector, martial law is declared, and he orders his soldiers to prepare for attack. The commander issues his order to attack, and the soldiers rush toward the unarmed crowd. The square turns into a bloodbath as the soldiers begin to brutally attack the protesters. Bill stands shocked amidst the utter chaos, while people's screams rise as they fall wounded, and a stray spear passes by his head, nearly hitting him. Bill is traumatized as he sees someone killed right in front of him, blood splattering onto his face. Uncle Phil spots Bill and screams at him, telling him to run and save his life. Bill rushes toward his uncle and grabs him, suggesting they take a shortcut to escape. As they run through an alley, the order comes from behind them not to let anyone escape. This is followed by a more brutal order to kill the fugitives if necessary, so a soldier aims his spear at them. One of the men running behind them is hit by a deadly spear and falls to the ground. Bill continues to run into a narrow, dark alley, trying to catch his breath while covered in blood. In that moment, his memory takes him back to the first day he went to the workshop with his father, where he realized something, and his eyes widen as he sees the alley in front of him transform into a network of glowing blue lines. Bill discovers in that critical moment that he possesses a unique ability to see the internal structure of things as a network of blue lines, a vision others do not possess. Using this supernatural insight, he immediately identifies an escape route appearing before him as a glowing red line through a wall, realizing it is their only chance. Without hesitation, he rushes toward the marked point and raises his hammer to smash through the wooden wall with force. He succeeds in opening a breach in the wall, baffling his companions who follow him, while the voices of soldiers rise behind them, issuing orders to capture the traitors and execute them. Bill turns sharply toward the soldiers chasing them in the narrow alley, while one soldier yells at them to freeze. As the soldiers approach, threatening to make them pay for their crimes, a mysterious countdown begins in Bill's mind as he focuses his gaze on the wooden beam he struck with his hammer. The countdown continues as Bill identifies a wooden support that looks like a weak point in the structure above the alley. Suddenly, part of the roof collapses onto the advancing soldiers, who are caught off guard by the ambush Bill brilliantly prepared using his ability. After the trap succeeds in crushing the soldiers and hindering their advance, Bill and those with him continue to escape through the dark alley. After reaching a safe place in the forest at night, Bill enters a state of shock and confusion, wondering to himself why he possesses this strange ability and what just happened. As the survivors gather in a secluded spot, the blood-stained Uncle Phil apologizes to Bill, who sits on the ground in a complete daze. The uncle tries to reassure him that their workshop is located in a far and safe place, but Bill asks him first to explain what happened and how they managed to escape. Bill, still under the influence of shock, asks his uncle about the truth of what happened at the protest site and how it turned into a massacre. The uncle admits that they don't know the details either, but the Empire's reaction was far more violent and brutal than expected. The uncle tells Bill that he must have felt it too, how the state has begun to ravage its ordinary citizens, causing Bill to lower his head, speechless. Bill places his trembling hands on the ground and begs his uncle not to participate in any popular protest movements again. The uncle tries to object enthusiastically, pointing out the importance of the country's cause they are fighting for. Bill interrupts him while kneeling, asking with anger and pain why his uncle has to intervene in matters that are supposed to be the responsibility of the Supreme Protector. Bill admits his intense fear and hatred of these conflicts, reminding his uncle of the fate of his parents who were conscripted as combat engineers and killed in the war, and that he lost contact with his childhood friend Sepia as the war escalated. Bill agrees that the suffering of the common people is painful, but justifies his stance that this is the motivation behind his hard work, so they don't lose their workshop without needing to protest. Bill breaks down crying, asking if his uncle thinks others aren't struggling, and if the country is more important than family, then screams asking what he would do if he lost him too. Deeply moved by his nephew's words, the uncle places his hand on his head, apologizing with sincerity and heartbreak. Then he embraces him tenderly, promising him that he will never make him worry about him again. Uncle Phil turns to the rest of his companions and announces his withdrawal from the protest movement, and they understand his decision, confirming that family comes first. The others agree with his decision, as some begin to consider withdrawing as well because they didn't plan to risk their lives, and others express their longing for their families and children. The next morning, Bill wakes up amidst his companions, who spent the night in the open on piles of straw. Bill groans as he opens his eyes slowly, trying to comprehend what happened. He hears the voice of his uncle sleeping beside him, muttering an apology to him in his sleep, indicating his guilt. Bill looks at his uncle with relief, thanking luck that he managed to convince him, and vows to himself that he won't let his uncle blame himself for the workshop's fate. He lies down again, closing his eyes and wishing he could finally return to a stable life again. But his dreams of stability are suddenly shattered when the place is stormed with force, and the commander of the soldiers issues a strict order to arrest everyone. A sharp spear is aimed at Bill's neck, who looks on in shock, while the soldier announces that everyone in the workshop will be arrested on charges of high treason. Soldiers storm the workshop and arrest the blacksmiths, while Bill wonders to himself about the reason for this sudden attack, realizing there is something suspicious about everything happening. Bill continues his analysis of the situation, deducing that if the authorities knew their location, they would have raided the workshop secretly at night or dawn, not in broad daylight. He adds to his suspicions that the workshop is located in a remote area, which rules out the hypothesis of finding it by mere chance, wondering in confusion how their location was revealed. One of the apprentices arrives screaming that what is happening violates the agreement, causing Bill's eyes to widen in a horrific realization of the truth. One of the young apprentices, named Tom, appears being held by soldiers, screaming in defense of his master, insisting that he did not participate in the protest movement. Bill looks in shock at Tom as he is being led away with them, realizing that his apprentice is the one who snitched on them. Tom turns to his master with a face full of panic and guilt, calling out to him in a stammering voice. Bill looks at him in shock and asks his apprentice with a calm before the storm about the reason for his deed. Bill explodes in anger and screams in Tom's face with pain and rage, asking why he betrayed them and sold them out to the authorities. Tom answers in a desperate tone, justifying his deed by saying they promised him not to arrest his master. Remembering how he viewed Uncle Phil as a useless person, Tom continues his justifications with tears streaming from his eyes, complaining that the workshop is about to close due to debts, and that Uncle Phil does nothing but drink, and that he knew about his going to the protests instead of working. He reveals that he heard about a financial reward for anyone who reports participants in the protest movement. He concludes his confession by saying he planned to use the reward money to save the workshop and start a new life after getting rid of the burden uncle, and that is why he reported them. Tom apologizes to his master, who stands before him handcuffed, unable to face him. After that, Bill is led to a luxurious throne room where he walks on a long red carpet toward a majestic figure sitting on the throne. The figure on the throne welcomes him, calling him my old comrade Sir Bill Park, while Bill stands nervous and confused. The ruler's identity is revealed. It is Oliver Prime, the supreme protector of the Valteron Empire, and the former hero himself, who asks Bill not to tremble because he is his old comrade. Oliver invites him to consider the place his home and to feel comfortable, so Bill replies with obvious nervousness, expressing the difficulty of the situation for him. Oliver gets straight to the point, asking Bill about what he heard regarding his joining the protest movement. Bill denies the accusation with panic, confirming that he is one of the hero's biggest fans, so Oliver laughs, commenting that the title hero has become a nostalgic one. Oliver tells Bill, sitting relaxed on his throne, that he might be the only person who still calls him hero these days. Then he reveals to him that he was only joking, and that his innocence has already been proven after a citizen came forward and testified in his favor. Bill feels relieved, wondering if the witness is the same man he spoke with during the protest. Oliver adds that he also heard that Bill's workshop is about to be confiscated due to unpaid taxes, and reassures him that he has already paid them from his own money, which leaves Bill in complete astonishment. Oliver refuses to accept Bill's rejection of the help, saying this is the least he can offer to the man who contributed to saving humanity, amidst the whispers of the attendees in the hall. One of the attendees wonders in amazement about the identity of this man the Supreme Protector speaks of in this special way, so the captain of the guard answers with surprise, asking if he doesn't know him. The captain of the guard begins to explain, saying that his lord must have heard the names of the three great meisters in the world, and mentions the first of them, the one-eyed Cyclops, from the demon world. The captain continues his listing, mentioning Vulcanus the Copyist, from the kingdom of Avalon. Finally, he mentions the third name, the Golden Hand Midas, from the Empire of Valteron. The captain adds, clarifying that the greatest of them without dispute is the Golden Hand Midas, who forged the sword that eliminated the Demon King, then reveals that Sir Bill Park is Midas himself. The man who asked the question objects, underestimating the title of Meister, claiming they have more than 20 of them in their kingdom, so the captain corrects him that those are merely titles distributed by the Supreme Protector to show off the Empire's power. The captain confirms that Sir Bill Park is a humble person who dislikes the spotlight, but everyone with experience in this field knows that Midas is the best of all. Meanwhile, Bill gathers his courage and asks permission from the hero to ask him a question. The hero agrees with a smile, asking him what his question is. With hesitation and anxiety, Bill asks about Sepia, with whom he has lost contact. The hero shows understanding, explaining that she is currently on a mission, and promises that he will send her to his workshop as soon as she returns. Happiness overwhelms Bill, and he thanks him warmly, to which the hero replies that there is no need for thanks between them. Before leaving, Bill asks a final request hesitantly, admitting he might be rude, and asks if his uncle can return home with him. The hero answers him with a serious look and a sarcastic question. What if it's too late to do anything for him? Bill looks at him in shock, asking trembling what he means by too late. Suddenly, the hero bursts into loud laughter, telling him it's just a joke, admitting that the royal sense of humor might be a bit strange. Bill freezes in place, unable to comprehend what happened, repeating the word joke in his mind in disbelief. The hero apologizes, explaining that he had to bring up an unpleasant topic, so he tried to lighten the mood with a joke, but admits it was a bad idea after seeing Bill's facial expression. He tells him seriously that his innocence has been proven, but his uncle's innocence has not yet been proven, and that running a state does not allow for special favors easily. The hero apologizes again, but promises he will see what he can do, and asks him to return to his home for the time being. Bill feels deep gratitude, thanking the hero for merely thinking of helping. Bill looks at the hero with admiration, seeing in him a bright light illuminating his path. After that, the waiting wasn't difficult for Bill, and despite his sadness over the disappearance of Tom, who left behind an apology letter and a meager amount of money, he was fine, because making his uncle and Sepia happy required him to stay busy and engrossed in his work. Preparing Sepia's equipment and readying a good bottle of wine for Uncle Phil made the days pass quickly. In this way, days passed without him knowing their number, and his features began to change into a scary expression with a strange smile drawn on his face. One day, there is a knock on his door, and a voice from outside calls his name. The knockers identify themselves as being from the imperial court, sparking Bill's astonishment and shock. Bill jumps from his place and rushes toward the door, shouting that he is coming, believing the long-awaited moment has finally arrived. Bill imagines the return of Sepia and Uncle Phil together, thinking they must have missed home-cooked food. He continues his fantasies enthusiastically, planning to ask Sepia about the condition of her equipment, and scold his uncle for his excessive drinking while offering him the fine bottle of wine. He opens the door with excitement, welcoming their return, ready to receive them into the home. However, he is surprised by a shocking scene. Instead of seeing his loved ones, he sees Sepia sitting on a closed coffin while bright blue butterflies flutter above her. He looks in stunned silence at Sepia sitting on the coffin, wearing a strange smile, then notices the cross atop the casket. In that moment, Bill's entire world shatters, his face emerging from the darkness, tears streaming down as he wears a broken, harrowing smile. Seeing Sepia from a distance beside the coffin, he approaches her and asks anxiously what happened to her leg. Sepia suddenly collapses against the coffin, then falls to the ground. Bill stares with a frozen expression at the horrific scene before him, wondering if what he is seeing is merely a dream. He regains his senses slightly, only to see the corpse of his Uncle Phil lying inside the coffin. He approaches him, tears streaming from his eyes, and asks in a trembling voice what he is doing here. He continues talking to the corpse, reminding him that he brought him a fine drink and asking if he has any idea how expensive it was. His tears turn into hysterical laughter, then into a desperate scream that tears through the silence. He screams madly while clutching his head, asking over and over why all of this is happening. He continues to scream violently, begging his uncle to wake up, pleading with him not to leave him. He feels excruciating pain, as if his body is being torn apart from the inside. The hero's lying words echo in his mind, claiming that Sepia was on a mission, and that he would send her to his workshop as soon as she returned. He also remembers how the hero offered him a deceptive apology and a false promise to look into his uncle's case. Bill realizes that the hero has given his anger a specific direction, a target upon which to unleash his wrath. Bill explodes in a resounding scream filled with hatred and malice. His burning anger finally finds a place to settle, and all his emotions focus on a single goal: revenge. His memory takes him back to the moment he left the palace, when the hero stopped him and gave him a golden token as proof that he was his special guest. He remembers how the hero told him to use the token to visit him if he needed anything, or even to sell it in the market. Sarcastically, the hero added that the token was made of pure gold, while Bill innocently replied that he would never do such a thing. Bill remembers how he grasped the golden token with gratitude, vowing to himself that he would return this favor one day. And so, Bill returns to the palace carrying this vow of revenge, leaving the memories of the painful past behind. At the palace gate, Bill presents the golden token to the guard, who recognizes him immediately and asks the reason for his visit. Carrying his tool bag, Bill answers with calm confidence that he has come to repair and maintain the Supreme Protector's sword. The guard asks him to wait while he informs his superiors, and Bill thanks him for his cooperation. While he waits, Bill contemplates his plan, wondering how he can defeat the hero. He realizes that the odds of winning a direct confrontation are incredibly slim. He knows his chance of winning is 0%, imagining the hero mocking him, and calling him a little rat. He imagines how the hero could sever his limbs with a strike so fast he might not even realize he had been cut. Bill acknowledges the truth that he is merely a blacksmith, a creator of weapons, not a wielder of them. Worse still, the hero possesses the legendary hero's sword that Bill himself forged, leaving him to wonder desperately how to overcome him. After deep and prolonged thought, Bill arrives at a simple and astonishing answer to his problem. The answer lies in something only a skilled blacksmith can do, something only a blacksmith would dare to think of: repair. Bill reasons that a blacksmith repairing a weapon is a perfectly natural and logical occurrence. In this way, his opponent will allow him to get close without the slightest suspicion, dropping his guard completely. And then, the most powerful weapon in existence will be right in his hands. Bill marvels at the genius of his plan. He will be facing an unarmed man while wielding the strongest weapon in the world. Having obtained the sword, Bill coldly wonders which tool he should use to kill him: his hammer or the hero's sword? Internally, Bill demands an answer from the hero standing before him, but the hero quietly says that he never wanted to be a hero. Bill mocks his answer, asking if he is going to complain about his life now, refusing to believe his justifications. The hero explains that he realized there are limits to what one person can save alone, and that he was deeply disillusioned by this. Bill interrupts him, refusing to listen to any more, reminding him that he was the one who killed the Demon King and restored peace to the world. The hero agrees that he did indeed save the world, but he poses a hypothetical question. What if the Demon King's army had never been able to invade the world in the first place? He continues his line of questioning. What if there had been no need for him to save the world at all? Bill asks in confusion what he is talking about, and the hero replies that it is simple. The hero explains his reasoning, saying they only needed to be so strong that no one would dare to challenge them. The hero adds that if their country had been strong, the war would never have started, but it was not. He reveals that after killing the Demon King, he thought long and hard about what must be done to prevent such a tragedy from happening again, and asks Bill if he knows the answer he reached. Bill looks at him, questioning this answer. The hero proudly declares that the answer is for him to rule the country himself. He explains that he purged the corrupt nobility and royalty, then sought out brilliant talents and elevated them, ushering the nation into an unprecedented golden age. He vows that he will not stop there, but will push them forward until they become an empire that no one can challenge. The hero asks Bill if he now understands why he summoned him here. Bill loses his patience and screams that he doesn't care about any of this, rushing toward him to stab him with the sword. Bill screams in rage, telling him to die quickly if he is done talking. But the hero replies calmly, "What a pity," and points his finger at Bill, unleashing a beam of green light. He casts the magic arrow spell, which pierces through Bill's body. Bill screams in pain as he falls to the ground, the magical energy tearing through his body and knocking him down with force. Soldiers rush toward the Supreme Protector to check on him as Bill lies bleeding on the ground. The hero reassures them that it is nothing serious, while the soldiers surround the prone Bill. One soldier announces the arrest of Bill Park on charges of attempting to assassinate Oliver Prime. Fighting the pain, Bill asks the hero how long he had known he intended to attack him. The hero replies that his question is misplaced. He adds sarcastically, "Is it really plausible that the one who eliminated the Demon King single-handedly wouldn't be able to sense your killing intent?" He explains that the correct question isn't when he noticed, but why he didn't kill him the moment he did. Bill asks him angrily for the reason. The hero answers simply, "Because you are talented." He reveals that he wanted to bring him to his side and that the offer still stands. He extends his hand toward him and asks if he will accept his offer. Bill asks in disbelief if he is serious about his offer, even after he just tried to kill him. Bill agrees reluctantly but sets a condition. He must hear the answer to another question before deciding. The hero smiles, amused by Bill's audacity to make a counteroffer in such a situation, and agrees to answer honestly. In a faint voice, Bill asks about Sepia and how she ended up in such a wretched state. The hero recalls his memories of Sepia, admitting that she was a very powerful fighter. He recounts how she broke through the ranks of 200,000 of the Demon King's forces and how she lost her leg in the final, desperate battle against him. Despite her severe injury, she did not despair, and together they managed to defeat the Demon King. Peace returned to the world, but it was shockingly short-lived. The hero explains that, as soon as humanity lost its common enemy, people turned on each other in pursuit of their desires, and the kingdom soon fell into a state of war. At that time, the kingdom's strength was so depleted that they were forced to send the heroes themselves to the front lines. All the heroes went, except for her, who remained confined to a wheelchair. The hero asks Bill if he knows the loneliness that consumes a person when they are left behind while their comrades fight. He states that Sepia, surrendering to this loneliness, turned to something no one should ever touch, black magic, and in this way, she returned to the battlefield wielding the power of darkness. The hero tells Bill that he has seen for himself the horrific side effects of black magic. The hero finishes his long story and asks Bill for his decision once again. But Bill asks another question, ignoring the hero's offer, asking why he didn't stay with her to help her. Bill confronts him angrily, reminding him that Sepia was his comrade and that he allowed her to reach such a terrible state. Bill screams in his face, asking why he left her to bear all this pain alone, especially since she lost her leg fighting by his side. He continues screaming, reminding him that he is the Supreme Protector with power and influence, and that he could have helped her, so why didn't he? Bill continues to confront the hero, reminding him that Sepia needed him. The hero replies coldly, asking if that makes it his responsibility, and who Bill is to dictate what he should do. The hero explodes in anger, shifting the blame to Bill, asking why he didn't come to the battlefield himself if he was so worried about her, and what he was doing while the hero was saving the world. The hero continues his scathing attack, saying Bill enjoyed the safety he provided, hiding in his little workshop making a single sword. He screams in his face, asking how he dares to lecture him about responsibility. Bill mutters the word coward, describing the hero as nothing but a petty man running from responsibility. The hero laughs sarcastically as he repeats the word coward. His expression suddenly shifts to a sharp, dark gaze, muttering a question. Is he the one running from responsibility? In an instant, the hero draws his sword and delivers a lightning-fast strike toward Bill. Bill screams in agony as his left arm is severed in a single stroke. The hero holds his sword and smiles coldly, wondering why he should bear responsibility for something that has become useless to him now. He tells Bill he will spare his life in appreciation of his past services, then points his sword at his head and fires, causing another severe injury. He adds sarcastically that he can now live out the rest of his days bearing all the responsibility he wants with that single remaining hand, while Bill screams in pain and helplessness. The hero departs, leaving Bill kneeling and bleeding in a scene filled with despair. Later, a mysterious figure arrives at Bill's abandoned workshop and knocks on the door, calling out to see if anyone is inside. Bill opens the door with his severed arm and pale face, surprising the visitor with his presence. The visitor reveals her identity. She is Sarah, the former Queen of Thieves, and a member of the hero's party. After Bill tells her what happened, Sarah lies on the grass, absorbing the entire story. She comments sarcastically that thanks to Oliver, the country has at least developed, but quickly backtracks and apologizes for her joke when she sees Bill's angry look. Sarah notices Bill's severed arm and deduces that she came for nothing, as he will no longer be able to work as a blacksmith. Bill insists that he can work, so she suggests he make her a new dagger or repair some of her equipment, but he refuses both requests. Sarah feigns regret, telling him that she was going to reveal the true story behind what happened to Sepia in exchange. Upon hearing this, Bill immediately changes his mind and agrees to craft the dagger, saying it will be just this once. Sarah smiles triumphantly, knowing he is a rational person, and asks him how much he will charge for the dagger. Bill replies that the price is the cost of materials, plus Sepia's full story. Sarah agrees to the deal. As Bill works in his workshop, he recalls what Sarah said about Sepia, that the hero had twisted the story to his advantage, and that she always knew he was hiding something. Sarah begins to reveal the truth, asking if Bill really believes that Sepia was unable to dodge the Demon King's attack. She explains that Sepia was the second fastest person in the party after herself, and wonders sarcastically if the Demon King was really that fast and powerful. She confirms that the Demon King was fast, but his destructive power was the real source of his danger, not his speed, and it would have been impossible for Sepia to lose her legs in a single attack. Sarah reveals that Sepia didn't fail to dodge the attack. She chose not to dodge it, and she did so to protect the hero. A scene from the battle is shown where Sepia takes the attack instead of the hero, who is helpless on the ground. Sarah continues, explaining that the reason Sepia returned to the battlefield later was that Oliver went to her while she was in her wheelchair and asked for her help. He told her he needed to win the war to become the supreme protector and that the balance of power was against them, but with her, they could turn the tables. Sepia apologized to Oliver, expressing her inability to help. She held her amputated leg and asked desperately what she could do in such a state. Oliver told her not to worry about that. He reminded her of the magic book they found in the Demon Lands, promising her that not only would she be able to walk again, but she might become stronger than before. Sepia objected, saying that this was black magic, a power that should not be used. Oliver lost his temper and screamed at her, asking if that was what mattered now. He continued screaming, reminding her that they were comrades, and asked how she could refuse his request after everything they had been through together. He confessed to her that he had been thinking of her and their team as more than just comrades, but she had disappointed him. Sepia was shocked by his words and felt confused. Oliver suddenly pulled back, realizing what he had said, and covered his mouth with his hand. Then he apologized, asked her to pretend their conversation never happened, and left. But Sepia stopped him, looking at him seriously. She asked him to wait and told him she would help him. A sly smile appears on Oliver's face as he turns his back to her, thinking to himself that he managed to deceive her. Sarah recalls that she was watching the scene from afar and saw Sepia agree to help Oliver. Bill enters Sepia's room. Sepia is surprised and the ring drops from her hand. Bill notices the ring on the floor and picks it up. He asks Sepia to show him her hand. He tells her the ring is hers and places it on her finger, saying it won't get lost if she wears it. But he is surprised that the ring does not fit her finger, and it falls to the ground. Bill looks at the ring in confusion, wondering why it doesn't fit. He tells Sarah that he made it to fit her size perfectly. The scene shows the ring still being too big for her finger, then falling to the ground once more. Bill stares at the glowing ring on the ground in shock, wondering why this is happening. Teardrops fall onto Bill's hand as he clutches the ring and begins to weep silently. He explodes in anger, banging his head against the ground, cursing fate and circumstances. He collapses on the floor, muttering the names of his uncle and Sepia, wondering where everything started to go down this wrong path. He wonders if the mistake began when he accepted an apprentice, or when he allowed Sepia to leave without stopping her. Or perhaps the mistake was when he placed the sword in the hero's hand, or even long before that, when he first picked up a hammer in his workshop. He feels that everything he has done up to now is wrapping around his neck like a noose, and he fully realizes the extent of his weakness and helplessness in the face of these tragic events. In the midst of his despair, Sepia approaches him and places her hand on his head, smiling at him gently. She touches his face as if trying to console him. Bill wonders, with tears filling his eyes, what Sepia is trying to do. He wonders in a broken voice if Sepia is truly trying to console him, especially since he did nothing for her at all. He grips his hammer tightly and makes a vow to Sepia. He swears that no matter what happens, he will definitely avenge her. Earlier, Sarah asks if she can receive the dagger in 2 weeks, then turns away and disappears. Sarah admits to Bill that she was unable to prevent Oliver from exploiting sepia back then. This means she bears part of the responsibility as well. Therefore, she offers him her help, asking him to call her if he needs her. She promises him that she will help, just this once, then dashes away. Bill looks at his new mechanical hand, vowing that he will ensure his revenge is carried out properly. Elsewhere, a group of fighters moves together behind their leader, and the team commander asks Hans to provide a briefing on their mission. Hans informs his commander that they received reports from villagers about frequent explosions near the village, and their mission is to investigate the source. Hans adds that it might be related to illegal weapons research using explosives or preparations for a crime, so the commander confirms he understands the situation. The commander reminds them that they are still students, and they must focus on reconnaissance and completing the investigation, avoiding unnecessary combat. The students respond enthusiastically and set off to carry out their mission. While investigating the explosion site, one of the female students notices the absence of the smell of gunpowder, suggesting the possible involvement of a mage. Another student notes that the sawdust around the trees hasn't scattered far, meaning the explosion happened recently, and the perpetrator hasn't gone far. The female student wonders about the possibility of using a fast means of transport like a mount or teleportation magic. Hans replies that the place is very close to the village, and if they had an easy means of transport, they would have detonated their charges further away, so the villagers wouldn't hear them. The commander praises their accurate analysis of the situation. The commander concludes that despite the lack of evidence, the suspect has no means of transport. Then, the commander is surprised to hear a massive explosion coming from behind him. Meanwhile, Bill appears training in swordsmanship in a nearby forest. Bill contemplates his sword, wondering if training this way is enough. He continues his training with fast and powerful movements, but soon stops to catch his breath, hearing someone's voice from behind him, commenting that he is just a novice swordsman. He looks up to find the students watching him from the trees. Hans expresses his disappointment because he was hoping to face a mage. Hans comments with disdain that Bill's combat abilities do not exceed those of an obscure bandit. The student Lin agrees with him, saying there is no need for all three of them to intervene. The third student, Philon, agrees with her words. Hans asks the commander if their mission has changed from reconnaissance to capturing a criminal. The commander answers that they cannot consider him a criminal so quickly unless he is already wanted. Then he pulls out an arrest warrant with Bill's picture on it, announcing that he is the wanted man, and his name is Bill Park. The commander reads from the warrant that his profession is a blacksmith and notices a strange note demanding his protection within the village, wondering about the number of special notes listed. His eyes widen in shock when he reads the charge against him: attempted assassination of the Supreme Protector. The commander issues his orders immediately, announcing that the man before them is the criminal Bill Park, and that capturing him alive is the priority due to the special notes. He asks the students if they understand what that means, and they answer in the affirmative. Philon interprets it to mean that priority implies it is okay if he dies during the capture attempt. Hans adds that this also means he is strong enough to attempt to kill the Supreme Protector. Lin decides they should attack him 3 against 1 from the start. The 3 students pounce on Bill, but he blocks their attack with his body. Hans wonders in confusion about the reason for Bill's weakness, and if he is truly the one who tried to assassinate the hero. Lin suggests he might just be an informant, and Philon agrees that this is the only explanation for his inability to even withstand their attack. After a moment of thought, Hans decides to throw the sword toward Bill, saying that ending it this easily would be too boring. He tells him that if he is a swordsman, he should die as a swordsman. Hans announces arrogantly that this is the kindness of the next hero, Hans himself. Bill picks up the sword and tells Hans that he is completely misunderstood. Bill explains that he sees no option for negotiation, especially since they appeared suddenly and attacked him without warning. Hans smiles and decides to teach him the basics of fencing, explaining that the sword is used to measure the distance between the swordsman and his opponent. Hans begins to circle around Bill, approaching him gradually. Then he rushes toward him in a lightning attack, announcing he will end it with one blow. But Bill is unable to see the fast sword movement, and the blade passes right by his neck. Hans explains proudly that in order not to break the sword swing, a swordsman must perform it this way. Hans follows up his attack with a powerful strike and a quick combo. Bill takes the hit and falls to the ground, groaning in pain. Hans mocks his poor performance, calling him pathetic. Hans stands over Bill lying on the ground, wondering how he will make up for the wasted time. From a distance, the team commander watches the situation, feeling something is odd about what is happening, while Hans expresses his excitement for this mission. The commander thinks that their mission was to investigate explosions outside the village. Looking at the shattered trees and rocks, they confirmed there were indeed explosions. Based on that, they narrowed the suspect down to a mage or an explosives expert. But all they found was this novice swordsman, Bill Park, who dropped his sword easily, and there is no smell of gunpowder or mana residue in the area. Meanwhile, Hans tortures Bill, dealing him several blows that cause superficial wounds, so the latter begs him to stop. Hans asks mockingly, "Stop doing what?" The commander reaches a sudden conclusion. If there is no one else with Bill, then his weapon is... Bill aims his hand at Hans and decides to end it. The commander realizes in a moment of horror that Bill's weapon is not a sword, but something resembling a cannon. Bill fires a massive blast from his mechanical hand, hitting Hans directly. Hans screams in pain while clutching his ear, realizing that Bill was hiding his real weapon, and calls him a coward. A metal chain appears from Bill's mechanical hand, which he uses to retrieve his mechanical hand. Bill mocks him, wondering what kind of swordsman abandons his sword so easily, and asks him if he still calls himself a swordsman. Hans screams in pain and anger, but Bill ignores him. Hans threatens to cut off his filthy mouth along with the rest of his body. He orders him to die, then swings his sword at Bill, so Bill covers his face with his hand. But before he deals the finishing blow, the commander intervenes and stops the fight, announcing that is enough. Hans shouts at his commander in protest. The commander admits that Bill's strategy was very good. He possessed enough destructive power to ensure his target's death and lured the enemy into close range to increase his chances of hitting. But at the critical moment, Bill closed his eyes. The commander deduces that the reason for his hesitation is that he has never killed anyone before. The commander comments that this is what it means to kill a person. No matter how much they want to kill you, taking a life is never a trivial matter. Philon blames Hans for nearly getting killed due to his recklessness and dropping his guard, to which Hans angrily retorts for him to shut up. The commander orders them to calm down and look at Bill. He asks them sarcastically if they really think Bill looks like a good combat training partner. Hans protests, asking if they should just arrest him this easily, so the commander answers that they won't leave without getting some training now that the opportunity has arisen. The commander points out that Bill hasn't shown any real hostility toward them from the start. Philon agrees that a person cannot fight seriously without hostility, but forcing someone to show hostility isn't easy, which Hans confirms. The commander issues an order to his students to take out their talismans. Bill wonders in confusion what these talismans are. The commander asks Bill if he is familiar with the Hero Academy curriculum. He explains that one of the mandatory programs is training students to kill villains without hesitation, where they tear apart the body of a living criminal. He adds that the goal is to accustom them to seeing blood and hearing screams, and the commander remembers that the name Bill Park sounds familiar to him. The commander reveals that the name listed on their training mission is Phil Park, and Hans pulls a finger out of his pocket. Upon hearing his uncle's name, Bill explodes in blinding rage and asks if he means his family. The commander confirms his words are true. Bill smiles angrily, realizing that the hero's determination is not yet complete and that he still wants to inflict more pain on Bill. Bill puts his hand on his face, finally understanding their plan. Bill realizes that killing Oliver means erasing everything he built. And with a crazed smile, Bill decides he will erase everything down to the last speck. Bill asks them to wait. He asks them if they need a real combat training target. He tells them his profession is blacksmithing, and fighting them this way won't be useful training for them. The commander asks him in confusion what he is trying to say. With a sharp look, Bill asks them to grant him some time to arm himself, vowing that he will do his utmost to kill them. Hans mocks his request, thinking he is trying to buy time to escape, and Lin suggests they kill him immediately. Bill asks sarcastically who is going to run away if they are talking about them, pointing to the finger in Hans's pocket. Hans laughs a creepy laugh, wondering if Bill really isn't going anywhere. The commander agrees to his request and asks him how much time he needs. Bill replies that 1 hour will be enough, so the commander orders him to go. The commander mocks Bill, telling him he knows what happens to those who are late, threatening to feed him to the pigs. Hans tells his commander that he told him Bill had run away. Lin blames the commander for losing the chance to get extra points, but he asks her to wait a bit longer. Lin complains of extreme boredom as she stretches. Suddenly, iron fingers appear in front of her and grab her hand tightly, dragging her along the ground away. Lin screams in pain and terror after the iron hand breaks her fingers. Bill appears wearing full armor, retrieving his mechanical hand using the attached iron chain. He announces coldly that there are 35 fingers left. Lin screams at her companions to kill him and to make his death as painful as possible. Hans and Philon rush to attack. The students clash with Bill in a violent battle. The fight escalates, and Bill is shown withstanding their successive attacks. The commander wonders aloud what to do against an enemy wearing hard armor. Philon yells that they must target the joints, while Hans declares he knows that well. The students try to exploit the armor's weaknesses, as the joints connecting it are usually made of cloth or thin chains. They launch a coordinated attack on the armor's joints, but they are surprised that their swords cannot even penetrate the joints. Lin loses her patience and screams at them to stop playing and kill him. She launches an attack herself, screaming at him to die. But Bill blocks her metal ball easily using his shield. The commander describes Bill as having a soft heart, and points out that even in this situation, he targeted Lin's hand instead of her head. The commander calls him a fool who still hesitates to deal a killing blow, while his students, in contrast, never hesitate as Lin is shown cursing and swearing while delivering a powerful kick to Bill, screaming at him to die. Bill falls to the ground under the weight of the attack. Lin orders her companions to stomp on him. They begin to beat and kick him brutally. They wonder mockingly if their blows are affecting him at all. Philon suggests they break his joints. Bill mocks them, saying they are future heroes attacking him 3 against 1, calling their act cheap. Hans replies while choking him that this only matters if he showed up to fight with honor and integrity. Lin reminds her that they promised to kill him in the most painful way. Philon adds that this is just part of the training and asks Bill not to take it personally as they try to break his limbs, while Bill in turn asks them not to hold it against him. Suddenly, Bill raises his middle finger at Lin. The armor is shown shifting and forming, and sharp spikes emerge from its joints. The students scream in pain and terror as they fall victim to Bill's new power. Bill looks at what is happening, commenting that restricting the joints was within his expectations. Then he turns to the commander standing far away, asking when he plans to intervene. The commander smiles a confident smile and points toward Bill. Bill turns behind him to find the students preparing to launch another coordinated attack together. Bill draws his sword quickly and swings it in their direction, but they dodge the attack easily. Bill curses his luck, realizing his sword won't reach them, while Philon dodged his attacks with ease. Bill wonders desperately if his sword can't even reach a student. Then how will it ever reach Oliver? Bill composes himself, deciding not to rush, realizing it is exactly like refining steel. He knows he cannot get what he wants with a single hammer blow. Therefore, he must strike once, then again, and again, and again. Bill continues fighting, withstanding the students' attacks and blocking their blows. Finally, he manages to inflict a wound on Hans' arm. Hans belittles the injury, considering it just a lucky scratch. Philon asks his companions how to end this fight. Bill answers that he has an idea. Suddenly, mechanisms appear around the students, launching a massive metal net over them. Lin screams that the chains won't break and resistance is futile. Bill tells her that even an ogre's strength couldn't break it, so how would she be able to? Hans threatens that if they don't return on time, the academy will send more people. He asserts that time is on their side, but Bill asks him sarcastically if he really thinks he didn't think of that. Bill asks them if they know the reason he set the trap now. He answers that it was for the same reason they attacked him. He needed some live combat training too, and thanks them for their help, while Hans recoils in fear. The blood-stained Hans begs Bill not to kill him, admitting everything was his fault, and offers to collect the severed fingers for him. Bill orders angrily for him to get his hand away from him. Hans continues his desperate pleas, imploring his commander to help him and save him from Bill, who approaches him in his terrifying armored form. But instead of helping, the commander announces calmly that Bill has passed the test, leaving Hans shocked by his commander's words. Suddenly, the commander beheads Hans, and Bill watches the gruesome scene without moving a muscle. The students stand behind the commander in astonishment. Then the commander turns to Bill and tells him he has passed the test. An evil and terrifying smile appears on the commander's face as he repeats his words, announcing Bill Park's success in this cruel, bloody test.